We started the Teen Memoriam project honoring the lives of 16 teenagers killed in 2007. Teen deaths were on the rise on our roadways, and we wanted a way to make this real for them to help them understand that they're not invincible on our roadways. The Family Remembrance Event is a gathering of all of our Teen Memoriam families who have ever shared their story with us over the years. And it's an integral part of the Teen Memoriam project.
It was Representative Lee Perry who came to tell me that Tyler had been involved in a fatal crash. He'd been in a car accident with his friend Mandy and his friend Nate. Lee was a family friend, and the minute he found out that it had been Tyler who was killed in the accident, he insisted he be the one to tell me.
There are not words to describe how much I hurt. I truly wanted to die. I miss him. Several months later, after the investigation of the car accident had closed, Lee Perry came to tell me that if Tyler had been wearing his seatbelt, he would have been fine.
So after the crash, there was no doubt in my mind that we needed to pass a primary seatbelt bill. We couldn't afford to let more young people die just because a small minority of people didn't think this was a good idea. I knew with Kelly's help and others, we could make the seatbelt law be passed in Utah and make a difference to all people in the state of Utah.
Lee Perry had been working for several years to pass a primary seatbelt law in Utah. He asked me if I would help him. I wrote letters and emails to representatives telling our story and begging them to vote for the primary seatbelt law. We sent Christmas cards to all of the representatives with pictures of our family and Tyler, and also a plea asking them to vote yes for the Tyler-Mandy bill. The bill had a lot of skeptics. When I went to talk to the representatives at the Capitol, one particular representative told me that he didn't think it was worth it. As he went to turn away, I took his arm and asked him, "Is it not worth one human life to you, sir?" He told me later that because of that conversation, he had changed his vote to yes for the Tyler-Mandy bill.
We need for parents to be willing to share their children's stories, to let people know about the distracted driving, the failure to wear seatbelts, sometimes impaired driving, to let other young people know the mistakes that these young people made so that others don't go through the same pain and suffering that these parents are now going through. We faced a great deal of opposition in trying to get this bill passed in the state of Utah. However, these programs helped educate all kinds of people and help bring the policymakers to an understanding of what they needed to do so that we could pass effective legislation that will save lives.
A couple of years later, my friend and neighbor, Utah Highway Patrolman Josh Carr, came to tell me that he'd just been on the scene of a rollover. The boy in the car was a friend of Tyler's, Justin Andresen. Josh Carr told me that he had been wearing a bracelet that we had made to commemorate Tyler's death. After the crash, Justin told Officer Carr that he hadn't been wearing his seatbelt while he was driving. He happened to look down and see his Tyler bracelet and decided to put his seatbelt on. Because of that action, his life was saved. With this law now in effect, hopefully that's the first of many to come.
There are two things that have the most impact on this whole process, and that is my LDS faith and the Teen Memoriam program. And I'm so grateful that I have both of these in my life. I have been going every year since 2008, the year after Daniel died, when the first book was published. I'm not the only person in this world that's ever lost a child, but I'm one of the few that has lost a child on the highway. It's good to be with other parents who have had the same experience as I have, and I find it healing, and I find it feels a little better that way because I'm with other people who know how I feel inside. Then I get the opportunity to tell my story, and I get to listen to everybody else's story. I want these parents to realize they're not alone. I'm not sure who it was that said it first, but one of us called it a club that nobody wants to belong to. When we go through all of this, it's important to not be alone. And I feel that going to these events helps every one of us so that we have a place where we can all meet and talk about our children and explain to each other how we feel. And really, sometimes we don't even have to explain how we feel because we already know how everybody feels. But it gives us a place to do it together. And it gives us a place where you can hold on to that person and let them know that, that you do feel the same way. Our children are our most precious commodity. And whatever we can do to protect them, that's what we as parents need to do. I am so grateful that I have been able to participate in the Teen Memoriam program because it has helped me heal in ways I didn't think I would be able to do. I didn't think I would ever get over the fact that Daniel died. It's not just Daniel's story, but it's everyone's story. We need to get these out to the kids, and hopefully by reading these things, they will realize that this is very important. We're not out here to tell them they can't do this or they can't do that. We want our children to live. I miss Daniel every day of this world. If I had one thing I could probably have back, it would be my son. But I know I can't. So I don't want any other parents to have to lose their children.
The Department of Health had heard about the kind of grief support that the Bradley Center does for people who've lost a loved one. So in 2012, Jenny asked me to attend and participate in a Zero Fatalities event. The Teen Remembrance event is unique. You don't get that opportunity to come together with people who had the same kind of loss you have in any other setting. And it's a very different connection than you would establish by going to dinner with a neighbor or having lunch with your sister. They get to connect in a way that says, I understand you. People who've experienced a loss and don't get the right kind of coping support end up often adopting some very negative and self-harming coping behaviors. It can be addiction, relationship difficulties, isolation, depression, anxiety, things that really change the trajectory of someone's life. Our society is so death averse when it comes to talking about the fact that someone's died or dealing with those emotions that we don't take the opportunity to really grieve a loss. No matter how well people think you are coping with a death, no one goes through the loss of somebody they love and comes out of it 2 or 3 months later being just fine. It's just as important for people to be able to tell their story as it is to connect with other people. That's what actually brings them together. Sharing your story of losing the person that you lost gives people a sense of meaning and purpose if they feel like their loss is going to prevent someone else from having to go through that same thing. People like Diane, who meet at the event and are able to help others understand that what they're feeling is normal, is vital to making those connections that then help people move forward. From my perspective, this is the single most effective use of taxpayer money that I am aware of.
I remember I got a phone call, and it was from my older brother, who happens to be the police chief of North Park Police Department. And he told me that that Jake had been in an accident, and he said, well, he rolled his truck, and when the truck rolled, the officers there said he was ejected from the vehicle. So as soon as he said that, I knew that it was a serious accident. So I told him I'd meet him at the hospital. Ended up life flighting him once they got him stable down to Ogden, and from there the neurosurgeon came in and told my other sons, who fortunately were with me at the time, that people just don't recover from this type of injury, this type of head injury. And it was then that we knew that he wasn't going to be with us any longer. Jake went to Skyview High School, had graduated, had got a scholarship and to go to Iowa Western Community College to play soccer. Soccer was his life, that's what he lived for. So his principal actually called me and asked if I'd be willing to come and share Jake's story to the student body, the seniors. I went in and stood in front of that audience, and I wasn't sure how they were going to accept what I was going to tell them. But as I started to speak, I looked out into the audience. And a lot of these kids were kids that I knew. The kids had been to the home, our house. So it was like I was speaking to my own children. And it was there that I decided that, you know, if I can tell these kids something that will prevent them from, and their families, their parents, from ever having to go through this experience again, then it's well worth the opportunity. And had he been wearing a seatbelt, and had he not been texting, chances are he'd still be with us today. A couple years after Jake had passed away, I was contacted by Zero Fatalities. Actually learned about the program through an email, and this is what we do, and these are the kinds of things that we like to incorporate in schools and organizations. And so I immediately thought, this is something that my fifth graders would be all over. And we decided to adopt and to take on the Click It Club, which is we have a number of fifth grade students that we select out of each class. They form the general committee, and with that committee they then they plan monthly activities for the rest of the school to raise seatbelt awareness and safety awareness issues. And it's been great because the kids take a leadership role in that. They get to plan and decide what they're going to do for the school. They're active, they all have shirts, they go out and they meet with the kids in the school, and they promote seatbelt awareness. It's really been a great thing, not only for our fifth graders, but also everybody else in the school. Our parents, people in the community, we do a seatbelt survey where we're writing down the people that come into the school, into the parking lot, that are wearing their seatbelts, and we found that it's made a difference at our school. So it's been a real beneficial program. But whenever I see those kids in their shirts and they're talking to other kids about, you need to buckle up and you need to keep your family safe, and why do you wear your seatbelt and why should you wear a seatbelt, I think, you know, this could have been my son. This could have been Jake when he was this old. So it really does, it strikes a chord with me. The student that I had that came up, he came up and asked me that, you know, when you lost your son, when you lost Jake, did it make you sad? And of course my response was, of course it did. It really hurt. And so his response was, well, I'm gonna wear my seatbelt, so you never have to be that sad again. And to me, that was that one moment where I spoke to those high school kids that I envisioned that I was speaking to my own children. And if just one of them would take the time to buckle up, put their phone down, it would be worth it.
It is my greatest honor to work with these families and to be able to share their children's stories so that they are not forgotten. The Teen Memoriam book and the Family Remembrance event are integral components of the Zero Fatalities program and of the Utah Department of Health's efforts to keep everyone safe on our roadways. I cannot overstate the importance that we continue to share these stories, that we continue to share these families' heartache and pains, that these deaths do not have to have happened in vain. These are 120 stories we did not want to tell. Our ultimate goal is to someday stop producing the Teen Memoriam book at a time when teen lives are no longer lost on our roads. Until that day comes, we will continue to carry on, doing all that we can to keep Utahns safe on our roads and inspiring others to join our cause.